Our IT person, Dave Harvey, will relay them to us. The link for this meeting was posted in the court index when the meeting was announced.
Thank you, Kathy Ancona, for putting our notice that we are available to the public right now as we are starting the meeting. And the first thing we'll do is we'll take attendance. Kathy Brinkman, Commission Chair.
John Delaney, Commissioner.
Victor Walton, Commissioner.
Bill Gallagher, Commissioner.
Merlin Shiverdecker, Commissioner.
Ray
And
Fowler,
well-
Public Defender.
Go ahead, Ray.
Ray Fowler, Public Defender.
Catherine Ancona, Deputy Public Defender.
Jack Herbert, Administrator.
Vivian Zeverink, Assistant to Public Defender.
And I interrupted to say welcome to Merlin Shiverdecker. This will be his first meeting as a newly appointed commissioner. Welcome, Merlin.
Thank you.
All right, the agenda and associated materials were supplied to the commissioners in advance of the meeting. And the first item on the agenda is approval of the minutes from the board meeting prior, November 23rd, 2020. Do I hear a motion to approve the minutes?
I'll make.
So moved.
Victor Walton moves. Did I
I'll
get a
second it.
All right, John Delaney seconds. Are there any corrections, additions? Hearing none. All those in favor of approving the minutes, raise your hand.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. The minutes are approved unanimously. The second item on the agenda are reports. And Mr. Herbert,
Yes, before I get into the staffing update and vacancy report, I do want to officially welcome Merlin to the board. His appointment was effective December 28th, and he will assume Mr. Steve Gooden's position for the remaining of his term, which ends July 21st, 2024. So welcome, Merlin.
Thank you.
thanks for that, Jack. And thank you to Steve Gooden for his service on the commission prior to his having been appointed to Cincinnati City Council. Jack?
All right, getting to our staff changes and additions since our last board meeting of February 22nd. As Ray mentioned in our last meeting, he recognized both Allison Hathaway and Carrie Bloom for their successful campaigns for their judgeships. They assumed the bench in February, so we want to certainly acknowledge that for our office, a first in the office. In addition, we've had 2 new hires since our last meeting. And as you can see, several promotions. And typically, these promotions relate to an attorney entry level completing their first year of probation successfully. So overall, we had a total of 15 promotions since our last meeting. 2 resignations, both went on to assist the judgeships of Allison Hathaway and Carrie Bloom. Those are Malik Strong and Tara Eggleston. We had 1 retirement of Jim Youngblood. And then the remaining staff changes, Julie Nestler transferred to the Court of Appeals, taking a position as administrator. And then Nora Hill transferred from the juvenile grant program to our general fund operating budget. And that lends itself to the success of our juvenile grant to move the employee to the regular operating budget. And then lastly, Josh Thompson transferring from the municipal division to, will be transferring to the juvenile division.
Hey, Jack, let me ask you a question about the transfer to the Court of Appeals. Is that still on the public defender budget?
No, that's upstairs. That's a new position or a transfer actually to their budget with the Court of Appeals. She will be the new administrator.
Oh, great. Okay.
Yes.
And thank you to Jim Youngblood for his service on his retirement.
So after all of those changes and additions, we are left with 9 vacancies, as you can see, 3 in our felony division, 1 in administration, 2 in our juvenile division, 1 in the guardian division, and 2 in our municipal division. So I know Kathy's certainly involved in the interview process for candidates to fill these 9 vacancies that we have.
And I just mentioned one other thing too that I don't think that we included, that we also lost Allison McWhorter in December. She passed away. She was a guardian ad litem supervisor. Hadn't been very active in the office, but was still employed by the office.
Thanks,
Yeah, we
Kathy.
certainly-
Thank you.
Certainly regret her passing, and we'll really miss her.
Any other questions on the staffing report?
Jack, I do. This is Bill Gallagher. If I'm looking at this, Malik Strong, he resigned, but he took a position. Didn't he with Kerry Bloom?
Exactly. Both Malik and Tara Eggleston, those 2 resignations, they took positions with the 2 judgeships. Yes, you're correct.
Okay, all right. So I mean, there's no one that seemed to be unhappy and left work. They look for other opportunities.
Absolutely.
Okay,
Yes.
all right.
They're bailiffs. They became bailiffs for the 2 judges.
Right, right.
Yeah.
No, I just want to make sure that that's clear going forward, that these weren't people that resigned because of unhappiness. They had other opportunities that they took advantage of.
Right.
The other question I have is this, Kathy, if you can help me, since you mentioned interviewing for positions. Are you interviewing to fill the felony and the municipal position, trial lawyers? I'm not saying I'm not concerned about the others, but I am asking about the attorney positions.
We will hopefully finish those on Wednesday.
Okay.
Yes.
How is the idea of going forward with municipal lawyers in the sort of class? Is there still some consideration about trying to hold those vacancies open and still allowing the class lawyers to, the August hires to fill those?
Absolutely.
Okay,
And that is progressing. Amy DeTish was promoted out of
right.
municipal into felony. Josh Thompson was promoted from municipal over to juvenile, so that we are definitely opening up those slots for that class.
Okay. All right.
Great.
Thank you.
And you're employing all of our efforts to diversify our staff in your interviews and hiring for the vacancies, I'm assuming.
Yes, and I think we're being very successful.
Good. Okay, back to Jack.
All right, if there are no more questions on our staffing report, we will move to the assigned counsel activity for caseload and payments for the year ending 12/31/2020. This is a comparison to prior year, and the trend continued throughout the end of 2020 that we had spent $5.5 million on assigned counsel when compared to the prior year of 2019, 5.7. So with the onset of COVID, we had a reduction of $209,000 in assigned counsel payments for 2020 when compared to 2019. So pretty much kept that same trend month to month throughout the year.
Jack, can I ask you a question that maybe we can address the next meeting, which is how many outstanding cases are there? One of my concerns is that in essence, a lot of assigned lawyers' caseload is significantly higher in terms of the number of cases they're currently sort of holding because they're not disposing of as many. Is someone watching that to make sure that we're not going to all of a sudden have a big rush of vouchers filed at some point and we're in trouble?
Yeah, so it's a good point. I mean, we are monitoring the open caseload report monthly internally. Now, we can begin to produce that report should the board desire each quarter with our meetings. As part of that, that might be a good idea to look at those statistics of open cases as we go into this year. So we'll continue to monitor that and provide a report.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Absolutely. Then our next report is the staff, attorney, clients, and cases assigned. And again, similar to the assigned counsel, this report compares the year end for 2020 on our staff attorney assigned cases and clients. The cases were down 10,643 when compared to the prior year. Clients down roughly 5,400. So again, here we continue to trend of down 24% in cases for our staff attorneys, and pretty much parallels what happened with assigned counsel as well. And I think jury trials are going to pick up again March 8th. Isn't that correct, Ray?
Yes.
All right. So activity should begin to pick up again.
Any questions on those statistics? Jack, next.
All right, our next item is the approved 2021 budget. The Board of County Commissioners approved the 2021 budget on December 17th of 2020. And the handout that I shared with you gives you the bullet points of the approved line items in the budget for 2021. The assigned council rate increase, in fact, has been approved. And beginning March 1st, all vouchers that are submitted next Monday will be processed at the $75 per hour rate for both in and out of court. That resolution did pass. And a copy of that's also included. It's item number 5 in our packet. Other additions included 3 new positions. We talked a little bit about the mitigation client relations specialist that came over from the grant to our general office budget. We were also successful in getting the guardian ad litem supervisor position and an additional staff felony attorney. So those are the 3 new positions approved in the budget. In addition, there's been a funding approval to support our guardian division from the Children's Services Levy. This is an MOU that was in process years ago that Job and Family Services is working with us on that funding. So basically what it means is our reimbursement from the state is currently 80% of our expenses we get from the state public defender. That difference will be offset by reimbursement from the Children's Services Levy. So we'll be getting full funding for our guardian division through the state PD and through an MOU with the Children's Services Levy of Job and Family Services. So we're working on that MOU at this point with JFS, and that should be finalized by next month, hopefully. Another item that'll go into effect, in fact, this Wednesday for the payday will be a wage adjustment of approximately 3% for all staff. And we were successful in getting that this year. Each division manager was able to distribute that 3% accordingly. And then finally, there's an item we put on the agenda, and if you recall last year in March, we were asked to save dollars because of the COVID pandemic and the situation that the county was facing with the budget. We were proactive with that request, and we're able to commit to save $1.6 million last year. However, we exceeded that amount significantly. In fact, during the entire year, we were able to save quite a bit more. So our ending budget for last year had a savings of almost 15%, $3.3 million. And as a result, we're requesting that you commissioners consider approving our request to ask the county to restore that for those furlough days that we took last year. And there were 6 furlough days all employees had to take. And even though they did recommend in the budget to give us back at least up to 1.5% to the employees who were furloughed, we feel with the reimbursement we're getting from the state public defender at 80%, if we could get that full amount of furlough, those 6 days restored to our employees. So I know Commissioner Gallagher requested we look into that, and that's something we just haven't heard a response yet from the county regarding whether or not that's actually going to be paid, to our employees. So that's something we want you as commissioners to consider approving, as part of the minutes for this meeting today. Something to discuss and consider.
Can I,
Would you
questions
take
on
the
that?
resolution and then we'll talk about it? The resolution is that the commissioners approve paying for the 6 furlough days out of our budget.
Correct. And and along with that, we want to include the language that we realize that the state public defender is in support of that reimbursement for those days. And so the net cost to the county is only going to be 20% of the roughly 200,000 in order to get those furlough days restored for staff.
So that's the amount we're waiting on a response from the
Right. We
county.
just haven't had a response either from the county administrator, Jeff Aludo. I get some communication from the county human resources director, Frank Spataro, but it's been very vague as to whether or not this really is going to happen. And we're a lot different, as you all know, from other county departments in that we have the state funding reimbursement source of the 80%. And that is was increased from 70%. In fact, the first fund transfer we received from Columbus actually in this past month on February 17th was for $1.3 million. That was on the November expenses, and that was actually at 80% is what their budget increased for us. So looks very positive going forward.
I think the resolution in essence really should be to recognize that the public defender staff and administration quickly acted upon the county's request to try and cut savings, exceeded the request, and lawyers who are constitutionally required really were required to take 6 days off. And I'd ask that $210,000 in lost wages be reinstated. At only a cost of what, $40,000 to the county.
Exactly.
So in reality, what we're asking them to pay is far less than any other department does on either a percentage basis or I bet you even on a whole sum basis.
Correct.
Right. It's a no-brainer for me.
And is that your motion, Bill?
It is.
Do we have a
I'll let Jack
second?
clean up the language, but I think it should recognize that the public defender's staff and administration exceeded what the county asked for.
And is there a second to that motion? Victor, thank you. Discussion, questions?
I have a few questions. So who did all the employees have to take the 6 days off?
That's correct. For 6 consecutive pay periods, each employee had 1 day without pay.
And
As essential employees still came to work, still came through with what they needed to do. We still covered our responsibilities. We covered room A, support staff, qualified clients. So actually, they worked those days.
how many people do you think worked those days in the public defender's office versus people who didn't work those days?
Actually, I would venture to say all employees worked those days.
Okay, so you're
They
saying
were
all employees actually worked?
essential activities continued.
Okay, so to the best of your knowledge, nobody actually took the furlough day as a day off?
I'd have to, Kathy, wouldn't you agree that employees continue with their normal schedule?
That's my belief, yes.
We had some people working remotely by then.
That's
And-
true. We implemented our terminal server here in the office where employees can work remotely and still be productive and effective from remote activity.
And how many other employees in the county, if you know, are there any other agencies that are seeking to get reimbursed for those 6 days as well, or were we going to be the only ones?
Absolutely. In fact, as you can see on my handout, during the course of the pandemic, this item was identified. Numerous county departments and agencies initiated employee furloughs as a means to address the projected revenue deficiency. So back in March of last year, each department had to submit their budget cuts up to 20% of their budget. Now, ours was initially 1.6 million because we considered reimbursement average from the prior year. But as you can see from the data provided, our savings was quite extensive.
No, my question is,
Other departments, yes, other departments actually did realize furlough days during the same time frame.
no, what I'm asking, my question is, are there other departments in the county that are seeking to get reimbursed now for those furlough days? Or would the public defender's office be the only agency in the county that's now seeking to get reimbursed for the furloughed days?
The answer is yes. Other departments are working with Frank Spataro at County Human Resources to seek reimbursement for those furlough days up to 1.5% of their annual salary.
Do we know if are the prosecutors trying to get those furloughed days paid now?
I would think they are. Now, they're not specifically listed, but they took a budget reduction as well. So a lot of times we don't have privy to information on the specifics of each county department. We just know on a general basis that numerous county departments are seeking that reimbursement.
Okay.
We're definitely not the only department.
John, I'm with you. I think that one of the important things though is as well, almost every other department that's going to ask for up to 1.5% of its budget back for those cuts is all that money comes from the county. If we're asking for $210,000, we're asking the county's going to pay 40,000 of that. The state of Ohio pays the rest of it. Right, Jack?
That's correct. And the state
as a percentage of their salaries, it's well below the 1%. It's just a greater amount of money to give these lawyers and staff that worked those days without pay.
Then I think the other point to consider too, our office is considered essential, with the justice system to continue without interruption. And we fall in line with all the other county essential services. Some other departments are not essential. And they took more of a furlough hit than many of us did.
Okay.
Any other discussion or questions on the pending resolution? If not, all in favor of the resolution, say aye. Aye. The resolution passes unanimously. And Jack, what's next on the agenda?
Well, we did discuss the passage of the assigned counsel fee resolution. That was the actual resolution was also included in your handout for the agenda. And again, that will go into effect Monday, March 1st at all vouchers received in the office on the 1st will be paid at the $75 an hour for both in and out of court. So just to follow up on that.
So if it's a pending representation, the payment will go from 60 to 75. It's not just new cases.
Right. Anything that
It's
we
new
receive
work.
in
Yeah.
the office, we have to have a cutoff. Our computer systems, as we speak, are being updated to accommodate the new hourly rate. That takes a little bit of time. But any voucher we get stamped in beginning Monday, business day. So the whole month of March will be paid at that rate.
Okay.
So I think that concludes item number 5.
All right. Next, we're talking about we got that. Public defender reports from
Right.
Rafael.
The first thing is the jail population. And last week, I think it was on the 18th, we sent you the jail population then was 1207. We also sent you the population for November, December, and January. I didn't send today's out, but it's 1176. I should segue into several of us had a meeting on January 28th with Sheriff McGuffey. We tried the first week she was in office to get a meeting, but she had to go to sheriff's training school for 2 weeks. So she was quite busy. But several of us, Kathy and I went, Sammy Silverstein, John Kennedy, and Sean Vicente. Was that everybody who went? We had about 6 people, our division directors who deal with the sheriff's office the most. And we met for about 50 minutes with the sheriff and some of her command people about some of these issues. The big issue was where the attorneys go on the second floor is so dirty. And the sheriff acknowledged that it wasn't clean and they were going to take the steps to clean that for them. But we talked about the population and she's interested in reducing that population if at all possible. The attorneys talked about the judges just saying, don't tell me COVID. They don't want to hear that anymore as a reason to let people out of the jail. But I think there's some plan afoot to possibly see if the sheriff will follow the federal lawsuit and release people because of the dangers in the jail. We talked about any number of subjects. We talked to her about safely interviewing clients. One thing we discussed is possibly starting arraignments at 9:30 in the morning instead of 9 o'clock to give attorneys more time so we wouldn't be so crowded and forced to interview everybody at the same time. That's going to require some participation with the judge. But again, the sheriff has expressed a willingness to look into that. We haven't set up a follow-up meeting, but we will stay in touch with her. I don't know if you have any questions on that or look for any further explanation. We're not happy with the population, but there's a couple things that might come up in the future that might help change that.
Ray, is the sheriff in charge of the 6th floor Justice Center holding area?
Yes,
And is that's one of the issues? It's not safe, no distancing and whatever?
well, there's no distancing up there. I don't know how we're going to change that part, short of unless they do staggered delivery of prisoners, if the judges would ever be satisfied with that. When anybody's identified with being COVID, they're not brought over. I don't have any more information about that for you, though.
Okay.
If there's no other questions about that, our next topic is about the Diversion and Inclusion Committee report. Kathy's going to do that because she's maintained that, she's led that, and I've stayed out of that so that our staff feels free to speak what's on their mind without offending me, if that's what they're afraid of.
Kathy?
So earlier this month, I conducted 3 different webinars with basically the same content. I envision this as being first town halls that we're going to do at least on a monthly basis. And the topic was the Diversity and Inclusion Committee launched the survey results, told people our purpose statement that we had successfully written, and then talked a little bit more about different subgroups or employee resource groups. And there are 4 that were created. There's a women's group, a men's group, a minority group, and an LGBTQ plus group. And they are off and running, so to speak. I think at our last diversity and inclusion meeting, we had 12 actual committee members, which was exciting because we started out slow, but have grown and continue to steadily grow, engaging people from all different divisions. I think employees are finding commonalities with each other that they didn't realize existed. And I think this is going to be really positive and exciting. I've talked about some other groups going forward, helping us with things that I think sometimes management feels the burden and also the desire to control, such as like writing a social media policy, finishing that. There have been suggestions that we have an activism policy, what's acceptable, what's expected of people. So I expect that we're going to have some more groups branch off and that we are going to get some fabulous training in here on cultural competency, implicit bias, and a host of other issues.
And has your administrative staff versus attorney participation increased as the numbers have increased?
It has, but I'm also wondering if we should have attorney, non-attorney groups. That's something that we explored. But yes, definitely we have engaged non-attorney staff, and that has been, I think it's about half and half now.
Be interesting to do. I mean, sometimes I think when you get a bunch of non-attorney support staff, then you mix them in with the attorneys tend to dominate the conversation, and the support staff doesn't really get an opportunity to speak up. That's just my experience. It might be interesting to do one for just support staff and see if you get, people participating more freely without attorneys sort of taking center stage, which we always all tend to try to do.
And the idea is that I started this committee, but the subgroups are definitely employees that they have a pipeline to upper management, but it is so that they can have a free space. And then obviously we'll deal with and be responsive to any issues that they need to share.
And Kathy, is the group pretty diverse? How does it break down?
I can say that the women's group is. I'm not sure who all the other members are in the other ones right now at this moment. We, like I said, had the town hall meetings February 1st, 2nd, and 3rd. I know like the women's group is just now going to have its second meeting tomorrow. So we're still pretty early on.
Can I interject here? The town hall meetings were mandatory. They were spread out over 3 days, but everybody in the office was required to watch the webinar. So nobody can say, gee, I don't know about this. I haven't heard about this.
And can you talk a little bit about the communication of what our diversity and inclusion efforts include that the entire staff is being informed about, especially our, summer internships, experiences and things like that, that they might not otherwise be aware of?
So we talked about the employee groups that I mentioned. We talked about education and training. We think that the stand your ground law can have devastating effects and that our office has an obligation to do education both with potential clients and potential victims, which tend to be people of color in other jurisdictions that have already enforced these or put them on the books. I'm cheating and going through my PowerPoint right now.
Mhm.
It's not cheating. That's okay.
We talked about, we did contract with Cohere, which is a community engagement and strategy company, to find out what the community actually, what their impression of our office is, and to put us closer out into the community and to respond.
Have you had Sammy, for example, talk to them about the recruiting, interviewing that you guys do and our efforts to increase the diversity in the attorney staff as well as the sports staff?
It wasn't necessarily Sammy. She was a co-host, but I did explain what we had done through Equal Justice Works and the steps that we were taking. The way that I look at it is that we need to be addressing like the immediate needs of the office as well as leaving a legacy. So it's like, how do we do both? And I think at least until this process for me, I was only thinking about like, what do we need to get people in the front door? So I think it's kind of evolved, and I think people are understanding more what the vision of the office is.
Kathy, you want to talk about the Equal Justice Works, the people who signed up with us? Because that happened in December after our last meeting. I didn't really put that on the agenda, but do you want to explain to the commissioners, the people for the incoming class?
Sure. So we interviewed and hired 6 people after talking to approximately, I think, about 60 over 3 days. And these are attorneys from all around the country. We had a short deadline because Ohio requires people to have all their materials in by January 15th to sit for the next bar. So we engaged the people, I think it was in the second week of December, and we got all of the people that we wanted. I know that I'm drawing a blank and I don't have a cheat sheet. We got someone from the Bronx, somebody from DC, Yale Law School, but it is a very diverse incoming group. And
NYU.
NYU, I'm sorry. All the people that if someone is interviewing through Equal Justice Works, it's because they want to be a public defender. It's not an afterthought or a second thought. This is what they are going to do. So that was very exciting.
And minority among the 6?
I would say at least 3, if I were to draw assumptions, half would identify as being people of color.
Mhm.
Well, 2 of them came from our clinic, and they're both color. And what was interesting is they would have been hired regardless of color. Color had nothing to do with the quality of their presentation and their appearance.
It sounded like from your description last time that the pool was a lot of excellent people.
But those are the people who will make up the class. One of our choices resent or called a day or two later, didn't she, and withdrew. We think she got something closer to home or something else. We might have been her second choice, but we replaced her quickly. That was the guy from Chicago, wasn't he? Or DC, he was the investigator. He's worked several years as a public defender investigator and is finishing law school and wants to come here.
Hopefully he's a Sox fan.
Yeah. We'll keep them all. And what about Gideon's? Where does that stand?
I don't think we have anybody signed up.
We interviewed 5 people. I don't think we matched with any of them this round.
Hmm.
It's almost like a medical school matching.
Mhm.
Yeah,
one.
but you are, wait a minute, but you are, wait, Ray, aren't you getting the Notre Dame student?
A Notre Dame student.
Don't you have a law clerk that's from Notre Dame that you're hiring?
If we are, I don't think I've been told. Through EJW?
No. I thought you guys had a summer clerk last summer that was one of the 6 that's being hired and went to Notre Dame, but he got Notre Dame to pay for him with Gideon's. I thought, no.
Bill, that's not ringing a bell with me.
Okay. My mistake. I thought I'd heard about that. I'm sorry.
I thought Sammy was working on an MOU with Notre Dame.
Yeah,
With that agreement for
Yeah.
the, similar to Sam Heller
right.
situation. And I know they sent a draft to Sammy to look over, and we
Right.
were working on the payments, benefits, how Notre Dame was going to handle that, similar to Sam.
Right. You have a law student that clerked for you last summer that went back to Notre Dame and convinced Notre Dame to go through Gideon's.
Right.
And he's willing to come back and work for the office as a Gideon scholar, and that's what they're working on. But he was so impressed with working with the office and found out talking to Sam Heller about Gideon's, he embarrassed Notre Dame into getting involved in the Gideon's project, and now they're going to be a feeder law school.
And that's
Yeah.
news to me. I've been
I
looking
received
for
an
that.
email from their coordinator at Notre Dame, and they're looking over the draft now. Ray, we should be getting that in a week or so to
Okay.
finalize it.
Okay.
Yeah, that's great. Yet more.
Sorry.
Okay.
And Friends is going to pay for one of your recent hires to go to Gideon's this summer as well.
Okay.
So you'll have 3 people. You'll have 3 people in Gideon's this summer. You'll have Jack from last year, who was prevented from going because of COVID. One of your newer municipal hires, I told Sean and Sammy we would pay for that person. And then if this person works out your MOU from Notre Dame, that person will be paid for by Friends as well this summer.
Great. That's awesome.
That's a big group.
Right. Yeah.
So I think that's the kind of attorney we want to get in here, who wants to
Absolutely.
be public defenders, and who get it.
Okay, anything else on diversity and inclusion, including our summer classes? Back to Ray.
This is something new since January 5th of this year through last week, the 15th. I met every Tuesday for about an hour to an hour and a half at 4 o'clock with 5 other large county public defenders throughout Ohio. T.G. Harris from Montgomery County, Ura Vetters is from Franklin County, Sean McNulty from Toledo, Cullen from Cuyahoga County, and Andrea Whitaker from Akron. And we're discussing common problems, common issues. 4 of us our officers are county employees. 2 of them are 501c3 nonprofits. We've shared a number of things in terms of office protocols. It's just interesting to talk to them and the types of problems they have. We're switching now to every 2 weeks, but we feel we've all got a group of people now we can call on for help when needed, or problems that maybe somebody else has seen that we haven't seen. So it's just something, it's a good connection I feel like I've made with these other large county public defenders. I think we've got all the large county offices. I'd have to say, in all honesty, your eventers in Franklin County is probably there the longest. He really, really has a office that's run wonderfully. He's got social workers there. We're the only office that has a panel that we run, and they don't quite understand how we do that. So we could discuss that with them. But it's interesting to meet with them.
So, yeah, you're on your own with respect to running the panel. There's nobody else who can tell you how they do it. Huh?
Right.
Yeah.
If there's any questions on that, otherwise I'll move on to the next topic. I've been in touch with Andrew Garth, the new solicitor for the city of Cincinnati, about a marijuana expungement effort that they want to get involved in. We're not sure how they want to do it. They want to go back and look at records of people who've been stigmatized the past few years when the city raised the marijuana penalty to 4th-degree misdemeanor. We're having a meeting tomorrow at 4:30, I believe, a Zoom meeting. There's several people going to be involved. Our office is, OJPC is to be involved. Janet Moore from UC Law School is going to be involved. There's some discussion about getting law students to help with this. We don't know. Chris Jones and I have talked about how are we going to go back and identify people? Are we going to reach out? Is the prosecutor going to reach out? We just don't know how this is going to be set up, but the idea is to help people. I have not met Andrew Garth personally. I've talked to him, but we certainly, it's something we'd like to see happen if we can make it happen.
I mean, does your data in your database even help you identify such people?
We could check clients on our own, but we've never called them and solicited them to get an expungement.
I think the thought is going to be asking the clerk for help. I think in our system, we can run the code section, but the clerk should have that information.
Whether it's us or private counsel or whatever. Yeah, okay.
Any questions about that then? The next topic will be the protest cases. I talked with Sean. On February 12th, Judge William Mallory dismissed all 18 pending cases that he had from the protest. He joined Judges Trotter Bratton, Ted Berry, and Brad Greenberg. Right now, there are approximately 120 cases that have been dismissed, but there are still 350 pending in front of the other 10 judges. The basis for the dismissal was that the mayor's curfew was unconstitutional because it was vague and overbroad. Also, the mayor failed to define several key terms. There was no definition of an essential worker or appearing in a public space. The curfew order failed to state what, if any, penalty was going to apply to breaking it. And the argument was it gave unbridled discretion to police to choose who to arrest. Sean says that despite the city's admission on the record that it can't prove the crime is charged, it can't prove the 1st-degree misdemeanor, they're still appealing the dismissals. And he said that they're not expecting a decision from the 1st District until later this year. I talked to Sammy about another matter, and she said that people do complain about having these things hanging out over them, that they're a detriment to moving on, but I think so far people are willing to wait to see what happens.
Sounds great.
At least they're working on it.
Yeah.
Well, last report, she was 0 for 20 on trying to get people released on COVID. And I guess they've been partially successful on some judges anyway, getting them released or, you know, getting the dismissal of these. Yeah.
Nobody should be locked up on those.
No,
All
hopefully
they're
not.
arrested.
Unless they've got something else pending. Yeah.
Right. Are there any more questions on that, or comments?
So who's making the decision over at the city prosecutor's office? Is it Andrew? Or
I
is
don't
it-
know. I don't know.
We met as a coalition, private lawyers, the public defender, Sam and I'm sorry, Sean and I, with Andrew Garth and with Tim Horsley a little over a month ago to make another pitch as to why they should consider dismissal. And they haven't responded and said no, but they haven't responded and said yes either. They're still sort of moving forward with their legal remedies while they're still, I know they're still considering it. They haven't fully considered it yet about whether they're going to dismiss.
Okay.
If there's nothing else on that, I'll move to the last topic, is a jury trial resumption. I was asked about the likelihood of this going forward. Do we want to go forward? I talked to all of our directors today, and just let me quote some of them. Sean Vicente said that because they're scheduled to start now March the 8th, Sean Vicente said uniformly clients want to go to trial, that he's previously told all his attorneys, if you don't feel comfortable being there in court with a client, come to your team and we'll see if we can put somebody else on the case. Sean said that Judge Bender has told him if any attorneys, PD, panel, or private, has a client who doesn't want to go to trial because of fears of COVID, those cases will be continued just so long as they let the court know. John Kennedy said he's not heard any reservation from his staff about starting trials again. He's monitoring what Brad cites the jury commissioner's doing, and he said Brad is sending out additional notices so that if jurors want to call off, everybody just says fine, there's no problem, they don't have to come in. Angela Chang said no one in her division has indicated any concerns. The trials resumed over in juvenile court last June. She said the court is following masking procedures. Kim Helfrich said the same thing with dependency court. They've been open since June. And she said that they use 3 trial courts and they do other things remotely. Sammy Silverstein was the most emphatic, and I highlighted my note that I wrote about this. Sammy says without jury trials, the courthouse is just a plea machine. She said clients want to get on with their lives. Still some 2019 cases waiting to go to trial. And they're all adamant they don't want this delayed any further. Now, Sean Vicente emailed all the division directors that anyone living in Kentucky could get vaccinated so long as they had a letter indicating that they were in contact with clients who were locked up. John Kennedy said nobody in his division lives in Kentucky. Angela Chang, all she noted was one Ohio prosecutor supposedly was flipped over to get vaccinated, but she doesn't know what happened. Kim Helfrich says that one of her people tried to get a vaccination through the city of Cincinnati Department of Health, but that person wasn't in the right subgroup and hasn't gotten the shot sent yet. And then Sean Vicente wrote letters for his people. I don't know if there's a thought that we should resist these trials, let me know. But our office is adamant that the attorneys want to go and they feel safe enough to go.
Yeah, I do have a question. The memo that came out from Joey Lubers and Judge Russell that it was going to be commencing on March the 8th says that it was after consultation with all the stakeholders. Is your office being included in those discussions with those 2 judges?
If it was pretty vague. I called her in January to congratulate her when she was appointed the presiding judge. And I don't remember any significant discussion other than we wanted to go. Judge Kubicki would usually tell me after the fact what they were thinking of doing. It was nothing where I then consulted with my division directors first before that decision was made. So no. But we've stayed in touch with our people regularly, and they've been adamant about wanting to go to trial.
And I'm happy to do anything that's consistent with all that and back you up. I am a little bothered by the fact that we're not considered a stakeholder in the eyes of the presiding judges in municipal common pleas court.
Yeah.
I think, and I'd have to double check, that Sean attended several meetings
Okay.
with Judge Russell on reopening the courts and
Okay.
resisted some of her suggestions, at least last year, about putting our attorneys in harm by reworking Room A. I think they just had another one February the 11th, if I remember correctly, at least as it relates to municipal court. I'd have to check in with John, but I do think they're consulting with us.
Judge Lubbers did call me one time to tell me they were considering this, or they were going to do this. She says, I'm calling you first before I call the prosecutors. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
I think that's the last thing I have on the agenda, other than executive session. But Kathy, if you want to look at the next item 7 about picking a next meeting date.
Yeah, let's do that. Jack, we have one set. Let's see. Nope. Last one I have is February 22nd, so I don't think we have one set.
We do not.
May would be the ordinary time.
Yeah, the typical Monday afternoon, March, April, May. Or April. Are we talking April, like 19th or May?
Well, that's only 2 months. You want to go to about 3 months?
Yeah. Are we stable enough with COVID to go out to 3 months? That'd be either 17th or 24th of May.
I'm fine with either one.
Fine with either one.
How about the 24th of May?
Sounds good. 3 o'clock?
Yep.
Yeah, is that good for Maryland? Maryland says that's good for him.
Okay, thanks, Merlin. Anything else that the commission wants to put on the agenda?
I don't think it has to be on the agenda, but Kathy, I wasn't sure if you were going to mention when you're talking about diversion and inclusion, I mean, by Kathy and Kona. Because of the generosity at a trust, Kathy Brinkman's fund, you're now going to be able to hire 2 summer. There's now the opportunity to hire 2 minority law students to work every summer for the next 3 years in the public defender's office. And as a result of that job posting, I think Sammy interviewed, 25 law students from across the country who applied to, minority law students who applied to work here for the summer. And that process is going to end up next week. Because of the Easterbrook Trust funding that, the Black Lawyers Association and Roundtable added a $2,000 stipend on top of the money set aside by the trust. So I just got to say thank you to Kathy's firm. I sent a letter over to the director of that trust. But we're hopefully going to include more and more minority and increase the diversity within the office one way or the other. And this is a really cool way to do it. I'm looking forward to seeing who gets hired.
Yeah, the Estabrook Trust, of which our firm, Porter Wright, is the trustee, has as its mission the improvement of legal education. And so the summer positions are very consistent with that. They also support, for example, the Ohio Innocence Project and the fellows there, and projects in Dayton as well as Cincinnati. So I'm very grateful that the firm is so involved in that kind of work, and especially in the work of the Hamilton County Public Defender Commission. So it's a very good program.
Well, let me say thank you on behalf of the office. We're grateful for the help. Absolutely. We tried through the Ohio State Bar Foundation to get a grant, but that didn't pan out.
Okay. Yeah, well, I was happy to support it. So that's good news.
We're working to form a committee right now that's going to meet with minority lawyers that have formed a group in Cincinnati. Ryan Radlin put me in touch with them. They get together about every month, but the representatives of corporations and legal departments as well as the law firms, and they meet and discuss issues of that. We're trying to see if we can find a way to make this even a little bit more permanent in turn. What the Easterbrook Foundation did is just sort of a beginning process, and maybe see if we can permanently create scholarships or positions for minority or diversity students.
Ruby.
Right. They are becoming the affinity bars, the minority bars in Cleveland, Columbus, and Cincinnati are all becoming more involved in cooperative projects like that. So the timing is right to see what we can do because we have shared interests. So that's
Right.
great. I wanted to say before we go into executive session, how reassuring it is every time we get an email from Ray that talks about the client-centered service that our attorneys and the rest of our staff are giving to our clients. It really lifts my spirits every time I read about that. And these are not always cases where we are successful legally in getting the outcome we want, but the kind of service that we give that goes beyond, just average representation is constantly reinforced by these notices. So I want to recognize all the hard work and the client-centered representation that attorney and other staff of the public defender give consistently. Keep the good news coming.
Thank you for saying that. It's interesting you do. One of the people on my email circuit is B. Larson, and she says this makes her so happy to read about these things whenever we send them out. That
Yeah, amidst all the other news that's not always so good,
right.
that's a ray of sunshine. Yeah, so thank you.
A couple of you did not know B, but she was the public defender when I started.
Right,
From cities years ago.
right, and legal aid and community action commission services and everything. I mean, she's done it all. Yeah. All right, so we do need to go into executive session. We have a matter, personnel matter to discuss. And Ray, what do we have to say? What's the official language? Do
I
you
hope
have it?
Kathy has that language there, Kathy Ancona. It's at the bottom of the last, oh, shoot. I didn't print it out. It's pursuant to statute. We moved to go into applicable statute of the Ohio Revised Code. We moved into executive session. For
Whoever can come up with it first, give it to us.
Is everyone going in or
this just be the commissioners?
Yeah.
just the commissioners? Okay.
I guess should we ask Dave now or at the end if we have any
Take a
questions?
vote.
The
Let's-
room is open. You guys can join the room.
Yeah, let's
And-
wait till we read the, if we can find the statute.
The notes are not helpful because it just says we did not go into it at the last one. There's no reference.
I think you have to go back to another set of minutes. This is one of the drawbacks of doing everything remotely. You don't have an immediate access to all the background you need.
Should have been September or October.
I think the verbiage is Ms. Brinkman moved to enter executive session pursuant to RC 121.22 G1 for the sole purpose of considering personnel
Does
matters.
anyone know when the last time would have been that we would have been in
Kathy, we
executive
just
session
found
by
it.
any
Victor found
chance?
it. So we're good. All right, it's on the
Yep.
record. I move. I think we need individual votes on this.
Correct.
Yes.
Good.
Start with John.
I'm sorry, what?
We need individual votes on going into executive session.
Yes, I vote that we go into.
Okay,
Sorry.
you can
Okay.
go into executive
Yeah, we got-
session
Kathy, we have it.
because
Yeah, we're good.
Kathy
read-
Brinkman moved to enter pursuant to Ohio Revised Code 121.22 G1 for the sole purpose of considering personnel matters. You're going to have to ask for that motion to be seconded, Kathy.
Okay. John, will you second?
I second it.
All right. And now the vote. John?
Yes, I vote that we go into executive session.
Okay. Bill?
And then
Yes.
we need to take a roll call vote of those commissioners that were present at the time of the vote.
Victor?
Did we lose Victor?
I think we
Victor?
lost him. I think we lost Victor.
Did we?
If I couldn't hear you do that, I'm sorry. Only one of my ear things works.
Oh, don't
Victor
worry.
went into the room already.
Okay, and Merlin?
Yes, present.
Okay. We are going into the breakout room. Please join the breakout room on your screen. All right, we get everybody back here?
We lost Ray and,
No, I'm here.
okay, cool.
Waiting for John.
Yeah, I'm here.
Oh, okay. All right, yes, all right. We're back in public session. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
I'll second it.
All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
The only question I have, when we adjourned the last time, we had to ask David Harvey if there had been any questions posed
Oh, thank you.
during the meeting.
David, can you hear us? Were there any questions posed by the public during the meeting?
Yeah, I can hear you. There was no questions posed.
Thank you, David.
Mhm.
No questions having been asked. It's been moved and seconded and voted unanimously. We shall adjourn. Thank you, commissioners. Thank you, staff.